right, so epic. Hi, everybody, and in the room and at home. It's great to have you all here. My name is Claire Schalbrack. I'm a managing director at DEPT. I am super stoked to be hosting this panel with Maggie and Jotham. Unlocking growth. Who doesn't want to unlock more growth, right? Ad trends, AI, TikTok, we're going to get into all of it today. So I'm super excited. I would love to have my wonderful panelists introduce themselves. So Maggie, you want to start?
Sure, I'll be quick because there's a lot of ground to cover and nobody wants to hear all that. My last two roles have been Hootsuite, which is social media management. You might be familiar with it, and then also Cision. But I have been a CMO for the last 12 years. So I've worked in B2B and have been delving more into B2C in my last 5 years. And then additionally, last year was part of the board that took Grindr public. So that is also a big area of work for me, and I'm an LGBT advocate, so I travel all over the world talking about issues important to the trans community, the LGBT community, and the world at large, because what's the world going to have without gay people in it?
I'm not nearly as cool as that.
I beg to differ.
I'm Senior Director of Marketing at Twitch, Head of Global Social Media, 3 years or so now. Got hired during the pandemic. It was really weird, not actually ever going to the office. Before that, I was in Impossible Foods, being the head of social over there. Also run my own small boutique agency where I do a lot of writing and musings and the like. So here I am with y'all. Excited to be here.
Awesome. All the things. So excited to get into it. So yes, our first question for you, Maggie, just around, we just talked a lot about AI. We're talking a lot about pioneering technology, automation. They're very buzzy. Who can't hear more about ChatGPT all over the place? Lots of practical applications right now in 2023. I guess, what do you think is the best practical advice you can give to marketers who are here in the room or listening at home about exploring this technology?
I would say this even if it wasn't AI and automation as the topic. I think as marketers, whenever there's an emergent trend, spend some time understanding it. I don't think you can resist it unless you know what you're actually resisting. I like to be an informed imposter. And so I think with AI and automation, the more that you play with it, so if you've been out on ChatGPT, you're going to be able to find these cues and these signals that really signal to you that it's not a human speaking. And so I think once you start to figure that out, then it's going to inform your own personal value proposition, and you're going to understand better how to have those conversations and how to navigate them. Because I do think at the end of the day, it can be really helpful for scale, right? So one of the things, particularly in social media, and I don't know if this will resonate with you or not, is with social media marketers, there's a real issue with burnout. And a lot of social media marketers are wearing multiple hats, customer success hats, and all of these other places where they're the front line or the tip of the spear for the company. And so, ChatGPT could help with scale, kind of that mass customization experience. But it doesn't take away from the fact that people still want to interact with their brands as personalities. Right. They still want to understand who you are and what you stand for. And I think, this is going to play out, in my mind, if we think about like trends and ad trends and data, when you're making decisions between sort of performance marketing and brand marketing. And I think if you're only looking at sort of scaled experiences, you're going to start to denigrate your brand. And I think the companies that have made that big trade-off where they're only doing performance marketing and really not focused on brand marketing, they're starting to lose out because they've diminished that social contract with their customer. They're not getting that forgiveness that they used to get when they focused on their customer and that experience and deepening that experience. So I think those things are really important. And I think that balancing the two is critical. Customers will still pay a 26% premium for brands that they love. That's important, right? There's real money behind brand marketing. I think, the last piece is that people will only spend 2.5 seconds on an ad tops. That's it. So I don't know how ChatGPT is going to figure out how to make that connection in 2.5 seconds in a way that a human can. And so really understanding what you want to spark in that 2.5 seconds is important. If you want to spark joy, you're going to have a much better connection with your customer. And so I think that, I don't know if anybody watches RuPaul Drag Race in here.
Yes.
Trixie Mattel. I don't think this was the application for this quote, but I'm going to go ahead and use it because I think it works here. And in one of her episodes, she said something that I thought was brilliant, and she said, if it's not hysterical, it's not historical. So if you're not saying anything that's going to spark joy and that's going to be memorable and that's going to be fun, your customers are going to have a hard time resonating with it. They're looking for joy. I say this to my teams every week, steal your joy. Everything in the world is conspiring against that right now. You have to be earnest about it. You have to go out and take it. And so I think ChatGPT has a place. It's going to have a place. But I think it actually will make all of us better marketers if you just get really informed and kind of rally behind how to use it and what the applications could be.
Yeah. I think for me, I think it comes down to what I always tell people: is you can't duplicate the sauce, right? It's like I can give you the recipe all you want, but at the end of the day, I know how to put it together. I know what it's supposed to feel like, and AI is not going to be able to tell you that. AI is not going to be able to tell you why someone feels the way they do. That's what humans are for. And the interaction, that one-to-one connection, the difference between brands that get it and brands that frankly don't. And I've worked at brands that don't. I know what it looks like. So.
Yeah.
We won't say
We won't say who.
Just go through my LinkedIn.
Don't
You'll
let- no,
scroll,
or don't.
Just
Don't
scroll
do that
through. You'll find one.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's odd.
Let's talk after.
We'll talk after. Find Jotham after. Speaking of sauce, I guess, social media platforms themselves, as you both well know, have been front page news in the last year. Discussion of a TikTok ban, Elon, and the absolute chaos of buying Twitter and all that has followed. So Jotham, this question's for you. With so much in flux, what do you see as sort of the next wave in social media, and how should brands be preparing for that?
Yeah, it's funny. The thing I always tell people is it's not important to be first as much as it's important to be best, right? And you'll never get killed for coming late to the party. I look at the fact that Twitch didn't launch their TikTok channel until 2022, beginning of 2022. For all intents and purposes, we were late to the game, but we still won awards, we still had explosive growth that was only driven by organic activity. And that all came down to the fact that we focused on what matters for our community, which is the creators themselves. And I think that's the biggest impact you can have. It's not really about, let's make sure we're the first one on this particular trend, because trends will go. I mean, I'm sure at one point someone in your department was like, you know, we should be on Be Real. And then you did it, and then you're like, all right, what's next? And there's nothing happening. Yeah. So why would I want to chase the high? The high is going to go away, right? What you want is something that's sustainable. And when you have that sustainable thing, and when you figure out what your audience wants, then you can strike boldly. But before that, everything else is just shots in the dark. So even when I tell my team or the people that I consult for, I never tell them, oh, let's go to Mastodon, let's go to Blue Sky, because there's no use case there, the audience isn't there. But hang around with your audience enough, they'll point you in the direction they need to go, and when there is enough, then you show up in the way you need to show up, as opposed to just worrying about being early to the party. That doesn't get you anything.
Well, I think new tech is a temptress too. I mean, I think if you go out there and you just start doing a bunch of random things that don't connect to your brand, you're going to actually denigrate your brand. And so it's okay to spend that time being in Marketing 101, where you go out and you study it and you learn it and you figure out what the application for it can be. That's still being active with the new tech,
right,
instead of sort of like ready, fire, aim. And so
right.
I think that's still a good practice to, if you don't know exactly what to do with it and you don't know exactly how it's going to connect with your customers, go see if somebody else figures it out, and then, Control C, Control V.
There's nothing new under the sun, right? It's one of my favorite quotes by Nas. Nothing new under the sun. So instead of me trying to figure out, I'll just wait. Let me figure out what Nike's doing. Like, what are y'all doing over there? You know what I'm saying? Let me go see what Spotify's doing over there.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Right, exactly. They didn't put your own sauce on it.
You didn't put a logo on it. Just kidding. It's more than a logo.
Yeah, I think actually this discussion about listening and data is a great segue into our next question, which is about just the availability of data right now and how we have more and more and more and more and more data points on our customer, on our potential customer, on the culture, on audiences. It's available at the touch of a fingertip. However, obviously, when not properly analyzed, it can lead to sort of that decision paralysis. So how will technology like AI make this faster for marketers in the future? Where are sort of your heads at when it comes to this?
I feel like this question comes up so often. I feel like I remember when I was in graduate school and they were talking about big data. That's how old I am, do the math. And it's still a conversation, and now the conversation is about AI generating that data and all these massive data sets. And I still have the same point of view that I had then. Not that I haven't, read things and been informed, but my principle around this is data's interesting, right? Data there's something there, but insights are what transform your marketing program. And you can't get insights just from looking at a data set, depending on what you're solving for. And so, pattern recognition takes time, and that's where the insights come from. And so I think, just being really thoughtful about, are you looking at a point in time, or are you looking at something that, you can see how this played out? And, I think, again, not to harp on this, but I do think this is where people have made these really sort of seductive trade-offs between measurable short-term marketing and things that can build brands over time. And we're seeing companies really be hurt over that, right? Making quick calls because they think they can get away with it because there's a pandemic and there are all these movements happening and rights are going away and we're just going to sneak this one past people. and it doesn't work, you get canceled. And so I just really believe that with AI and with machine learning and with these with this data, really ask yourself the question, am I looking at an insight or am I just looking at a data point? Because data points don't always tell you all the whole story.
Yeah, I always tell my team, we're not data driven, we're data influenced, right? So what we're doing is taking the data we're seeing and creating a story from that. Not everything we do is going to match up directly with the data saying, because that's where that human element, that sauce comes in again to kind of guide your actions. And ultimately, I don't want my teams to be robots. I don't want them to say the data says this, so we're going to do this. Data can lie to you a lot of the time, right? So let's not be slaves to that, let's be flexible at all times.
Yeah, data informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, data influenced. We love that. Great. So one more question before we turn it over for Q&A. And Jotham, to start with you, and I think particularly interested in your insights on the creator side of this, which is again a very hot topic, and thinking about growth seems to be something that people are talking about a lot. So yes, the creator economy, very hot topic, continues to be, and continue to see this changing. TikTok, obviously Twitch is leading the pack there. What are some things that brands often miss when they're thinking about the creator marketing in your mind?
I'm going to use a quote from the late, great Paul Mooney, but I'm going to paraphrase this severely. Because often when you hear about creators and spaces, it's all about like authenticity. It's like the buzzword everyone throws around. But as Paul Mooney would say, everybody wants to be authentic, but nobody really wants to be authentic. And I say that because it's one thing to say, we're going to get this creator and it's going to work. It's another thing completely to be like, we are going to give them the keys to the kingdom and make something that's wholly unique to them, their audience, and their communities. Why would you engage with the creator? Why would you spend that money, especially in these times, if you're not going to give them the requisite control to make something that's altogether new and unique and impactful? Otherwise, what's the point? You're wasting your time. You're wasting their time, frankly. Second to that, I would say is, I think often when we think creators, our mind immediately goes to the highest and the brightest, right? Let's find the one who has millions of followers. And often what I found is that sweet spot really is those lower to mid-tier. I don't want to say lower because I don't want to besmirch their craft, obviously. Like the ones who are not as high in the totem pole, if you will. And those are folks who I would say, one, they're growing fast. Two, they're less mercenary-like, if you will. They're frankly easier to work with. And they have fan bases that are frankly a lot more rabid for what they're doing, right? If I go to a Ninja stream, he's no longer under contract with us, so I can say Ninja now. If I go to a Ninja stream on whatever network he happens to be on at the time, that thing is going so fast. There's no way he's actually going to engage with you, right? There's no one-to-one connection with his community. He's not really pushing the envelope in any way. He's not really influencing what they're doing anymore. They're just kind of there passively enjoying what's going on. Now, if I find a person like Story Mode Bay, you probably haven't heard of her, that's someone who we post about her one time and people go crazy for her, right? Her audience is resharing it, they're engaging with it, he's replying to them. It's a much more communal experience, as it would be than if I grab someone else. So there's that. So those are two things to me I'd say spend out the most. Like give them the keys, let them do what they do, and then also like find the ones who are on the come up first and foremost. And not to mention, we'll do more of that. And that's more impactful, I think.
Well, I think there's research and results to back it. I mean, I think to your point, we would call them like micro-influencers, people that have these really tightly curated communities. They're out in that community specifically there for that reason, and so they're gonna stand for your brand in a different way. So I think there's a lot of value in just taking the time to actually look for other opportunities with influencers. We did not use professional actors for our Hootsuite rebrand last summer. We only used influencers. And Hootsuite stuff goes viral. I mean, we're very, very good at social media. It was the most viewed video in the history of Hootsuite, and this is going back 13 years. And with the actors that we used even at our shoot, it was actually over in Brooklyn. It was amazing. And the people that follow those influencers are all now following Hootsuite, and we didn't have to pay for that, right? They were super passionate. Not that we paid them; they're great. I want to be really clear. Like, don't underpay don't underpay creators. No, I mean that's really important. I think people take advantage of the creator segment, and I think it's really important that we not be part of that. But when you have people that have their own authentic interest in what you're doing, it just pays dividends that are hard to quantify.
Yeah. Well, we have some questions from the audience. We would love some questions from those in the room as well for our wonderful panelists. And just to follow up on the discussion we're having about creators, the question from folks at home is, when working with creators, has the discussion come up with AI-generated content and creators disclosing that to the brand or agency they're creating for? Have you experienced any of that starting to happen with AI-generated creative? Or
I have not.
I have not.
Yeah,
I haven't
not yet.
seen it.
No.
My team keeps a pretty DEPT, and my team keep a pretty close check on what's coming in.
Yeah.
And we work pretty close with them as far as the content that's coming in. So that we haven't yet experienced that. And I think if it did come in, we would catch it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That being said, that doesn't mean I am not opposed to it. I think there are specific niches that I might be interested in that time, but at the time it hasn't come up. Frankly, I'm not really interested in that anyway, so.
Yeah, interesting.
It'd be that as well.
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Giselle from Red Bull. Yeah, it seems a space to watch for sure. Before sort of wrapping in a couple of minutes left, is there any questions from folks here in the room with us? I see a hand here, but I can't see the face.
I see two hands.
I had a question. You talked about not necessarily rushing into trends. So online trends pop up all the time. Like, how do you recognize what's viable and what's not viable? Because the speed of the internet is like an Olympic race in trying to to get there, to make sure that you get to your consumers first, so you can market first. How do you separate that?
That's a great question.
Right.
I'm
That's a
going to
great
have an answer
question.
you're going to hate, and then maybe he'll have one that you'll love.
Yeah.
Because I think
might hate 'em both.
I think the only real answer to that is understanding who your targets are so intimately that you can recognize that a trend is going to resonate with your audience right away, and that just comes from experience.
Right.
And it comes from really being deep and understanding like the personas that you're going after, the targets you're trying to appeal to, and the markets you're trying to build. And I wish there was a better answer, but I don't know that there is. I mean, I think because it is just going to be popcorn. It's just going to be internet popcorn. It's going to keep happening. And you have to know, do I want to eat popcorn today, or is it kind of a Fritos day, right?
Yeah.
And then,
Valid.
skip it. So what do you think? Maybe you have a better answer.
I think I use a lot of quotes. John Wooden, it's be quick but don't hurry, right? And I think often we get caught up in this idea we have to be there. We have to be the first. We have to strike gold in this way. But your audience is never going to ding you if you don't hop on a trend. They will ding you if you do, though, right?
You do it poorly.
Yeah, they're going to be like, you suck. Hello, fellow kids. Like, it's going to be one of those kind of situations. Frankly, I don't want that. I'm 35, and I don't want to be sad when I look at my job. But that being said, ultimately, it always comes down to what is the activity that you want your target audience to take, right? And often, I think we get caught up in what's happening, and we lose sight of there is a larger goal we're trying to achieve. And if we keep that true north of what we're trying to achieve and how we go about that and what resonates with them, back to Maggie's point, you'll understand when you should lean in and when you should lean out, frankly.
Great. We have 1 minute left, but
We had a second question over here.
Oh, there was.
Oh, I think, okay, well, we can maybe take one more question and then wrap really quick.
I'll try and be quick.
Okay.
So wanted to push back on this idea that the sauce is unique. I saw this really interesting talk a content creator named Destiny held on the idea of basically just AI-generated images and whether or not that's art relative to art created by people. I feel the parallels here where the storytelling created by marketers theoretically should be different and distinct from AI storytelling, but is that really the case?
I'll say it like this. In my studies, it seems that AI is often pulling what they're doing from the wider net, right? They're pulling from sources they're scraping in some way. In a similar fashion, when I say nothing is new under the sun, everything you're doing is influenced in various fashions, right? There's a difference in my mind between scraping and cobbling together versus I have a spark of inspiration that drives me to create a whole new thing. Like I can be outside, see a bluebird, and think, ooh, you know what I want to make today? Blueberry pie. Only thing that sparked it was the fact that it was the color blue, right? It necessarily wasn't tied to the fact that there's a bird there. And so that's why I say the sauce is unique. It sends you down a path that I think AI really can't travel down. And even then, the use of AI itself, I think, is unique in the sense of you're still a person who's driving these prompts, right? You're still a person who's saying, I want this. And then based off that input, now I want something else. And you're building it alongside. So I think even that is a special skill that not everyone can replicate in of itself.
So I might add one insight that I was sitting in a lecture class in graduate school, and I ended up sitting next to the head of the journalism school. And so this was in the late aughts. And I was talking to him about, do I really have to read The Economist to be good at, like, am I going to get to the C-suite if I don't want to read Harvard Business Review because I hate it? Like, I want the tweet. Like, I don't want to read the whole article. I don't have the attention span for it. And he's like, read the things that inspire you. And I'm like, well, what if it's People Magazine? Like, what if there are different things? What if it's IMDb? What if, like, I read a lot of really different, disparate things, but that's where my creativity comes from. And so I think about, like, how you would build an algorithm for AI. It's going to be informed by solving a discrete problem set versus a human that's going to be informed by all these different experiences that like make up the tapestry of your life. And I think that's like if I'm sitting in the new world, like I'm in a stage of my career where my job is to keep people inspired and keep them moving forward. My best advice would be go out and have as many interesting and unique experiences with the world and with humanity as you can, and you're always going to beat the algorithm. You're always going to have a more interesting take.
What a lovely note to leave it on. Thank you all for your questions and for listening here and at home. Maggie, Jotham, thank you guys so much for
Thank you for having us.
for being here with me. And yeah, thank you everybody.